If you look at London from the outside, it still seems like one of the world's greatest cities. The skyline keeps growing. New restaurants open every week. The tube is still packed during rush hour. But if you actually talk to people who live here, or used to live here, you'll hear a very different story. More people are leaving London than moving in. For the first time in decades, the city is experiencing net migration loss. Between 2020 and 2023, London lost over 500,000 residents. That's 500,000 people who decided London wasn't worth it anymore. Some of this was pandemic-related. Sure, remote work made it possible to leave. But here's the thing. Most of them haven't come back. Even as offices reopened and life returned to something resembling normal, people stayed away. They found cheaper places to live, better quality of life, and realized they didn't actually miss London as much as they thought they would. I've lived in London for years, and I've watched friends, colleagues, and neighbors pack up and leave one by one. The reasons are always similar. It's too expensive. The commute is exhausting. The flat is too small. Life feels like a constant grind just to stay in place. These aren't people who failed in London. These are successful professionals, families, young couples who were doing fine by most standards. They just reached a point where they asked themselves why they were working so hard to afford a lifestyle that wasn't actually making them happy. The city that once represented opportunity, culture, and excitement now feels more like an expensive trap. You're paying premium prices for a diminishing return. And the statistics back this up. Internal migration data shows people moving to Manchester, Bristol, Birmingham, and even smaller towns in droves. The question isn't whether people are leaving London. They clearly are. The real question is why. What's changed about London that's making even successful people want out? Let's break it down. Let's start with the most obvious problem. London is brutally expensive, and it's gotten worse. The average rent for a one-bedroom flat in Zone 2 is now around $2,000 per month. That's not Mayfair or Knightsbridge. That's just normal inner London. If you want Zone 1, you're looking at $2,500 or more. To afford that comfortably, you'd need to be earning at least $70,000 a year. And that's just for rent. That doesn't include council tax, utilities, transport, food, or anything resembling a social life. The average London salary is about $44,000. Do the math. Most people can't afford to live anywhere near where they work without either sharing a flat well into their 30s or spending more than half their income on housing. Buying property is even more absurd. The average house price in London is over $530,000. For a flat, you're still looking at around $430,000. First-time buyers need a deposit of at least $50,000, often more. If you're saving $500 a month, which is optimistic. Given rent costs, that's 8 years just to save a deposit. By then, prices will have gone up again. Meanwhile, wages haven't kept pace. Real wages in London, adjusted for inflation, have barely grown since 2008. You're working just as hard, probably harder, but your money buys less than it did 15 years ago. The cost of everything else has skyrocketed too. A pint in central London is easily $7 or $8. A casual dinner out is $30 to $40 per person. A monthly travel card for zones 1 to 3 is $200. Gym memberships, groceries, even a haircut, everything costs more in London. The promise used to be that London salaries justified London prices. But that equation doesn't work anymore. You can earn $50,000 in London and struggle, or earn $35,000 in Manchester and live comfortably. More people are doing that calculation and choosing to leave. Even if you can somehow afford London rent, finding a decent place to live is its own nightmare. The quality of housing in London is shockingly bad for what you pay. I've viewed flats where the bedroom couldn't fit a double bed, where the kitchen was literally a hot plate in the corner of the living room, where mold covered the bathroom ceiling and the landlord's response was just paint over it. These weren't cheap places either. These were $1,400 to $1,600 per month. The competition for rentals is insane. You'll show up to a viewing and there'll be 15 other people there. Landlords know they can charge whatever they want and treat tenants however they like because demand is still high enough. I know people who've offered 6 months rent up front just to secure a flat. The average London renter moves every 18 months because landlords either sell up, increase rent beyond what's affordable, or decide they want the property back. There's no stability. You can't settle. You're always one rent increase away from having to pack up and start the search again. The build quality of new developments is often terrible, too. You pay premium prices for paper-thin walls, tiny rooms marketed as spacious, and shared courtyards that pass for outdoor space. Developers cram as many units as possible into every building to maximize profit, and buyers or renters are left with the consequences. Leasehold scandals have burned thousands of people. Ground rents doubling every 10 years, service charges reaching $5,000 or $6,000 annually. Cladding issues post-Grenfell that have left people trapped in unsellable flats. Even people who managed to buy into London are finding themselves stuck in properties they can't afford to maintain or sell. And if you want an actual house with a garden, forget it unless you're earning well into six figures or you're willing to move so far out that your commute is 2 hours each way. For families especially, London just doesn't work anymore. One thing that doesn't get talked about enough is how soul-destroying the London commute has become. The average Londoner spends 79 minutes commuting each day. That's over 6.5 hours per week. Nearly 350 hours per year just sitting on trains, buses, or stuck in traffic. That's almost 15 full days of your life every year spent commuting. The tube is overcrowded, unreliable, and expensive. If you've ever been on the Northern Line at 8:30 a.m., you know what I'm talking about. You're packed in so tight you can't move. In summer, it's unbearably hot. Delays are constant, signal failures, person under a train, severe delays. We apologize for the inconvenience. It's a daily lottery whether you'll get to work on time. Overground and national rail services are worse. Strikes happen constantly. Tickets cost a fortune and keep going up while the service gets worse. A daily commute from somewhere like Guildford or Brighton into London can cost over $5,000 a year. You're paying luxury prices for third-rate service. And it's not just the time and money, it's the psychological toll. Starting and ending every day crammed against strangers, standing for an hour because there are no seats, dealing with delays and cancellations, it wears you down. People arrive at work already exhausted and stressed before they've even started. Then they do it all again on the way home. Remote work showed people there was another way. During lockdown, that commute disappeared. People got hours of their life back. They could exercise in the morning, have breakfast with their kids, start work without already being drained. When companies started demanding people come back to the office, a lot of workers just said no. They'd rather find a new job that lets them work remotely than go back to that commute. And honestly, who can blame them? London used to offer things that justified the cost and hassle. World-class culture, incredible restaurants, endless things to do. But even that's not what it used to be. Nightlife has been decimated. Over 400 nightclubs have closed in London since 2015. Live music venues are shutting down because of noise complaints from new luxury flat developments built next door. Pubs are closing at a rate of 2 per week. The places that made London feel alive and vibrant are disappearing. The culture that's left is increasingly expensive. West End theater tickets are $80 to $150. Gig tickets have tripled in price. Even just going to the cinema in central London can cost $20 per person. If you're already stretched thin paying rent, you can't afford to actually enjoy the city you're paying so much to live in. Green space is limited and often crowded. London parks are great, but on a sunny weekend, they're absolutely rammed. If you want actual nature, proper countryside where you can breathe and have space, you need to leave London entirely. The air quality is terrible. London regularly breaches safe pollution limits. If you have kids, you're raising them in an environment where they're breathing in harmful levels of nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter. Studies have linked London's air pollution to thousands of premature deaths and respiratory problems in children. Safety has become a concern too. Knife crime remains a serious issue in many boroughs. Theft and antisocial behavior have increased, particularly on public transport. People don't feel as safe as they used to, especially at night. The small neighborhood feel that parts of London used to have is vanishing. Communities are being replaced by transient populations of renters who move every year. Local shops are becoming chain stores or luxury boutiques. The soul of the city feels like it's being stripped away and replaced with expensive blandness. You're paying more to live in a worse version of what London used to be. The pandemic fundamentally changed how people think about where they live. Before 2020, living in London made sense if your career required it. You had to be where the jobs were. Remote work obliterated that logic. Suddenly, you could do your London job from anywhere in the country. And people realized they'd been making huge sacrifices for no reason. Why pay $2,000 a month for a one-bedroom flat in Clapham when you could rent a three-bedroom house with a garden in Bristol for $2,400? Why spend 6 hours a week commuting when you could work from home and have that time back? The math became impossible to ignore. I know a couple who moved from Hackney to Devon during the pandemic. Their combined rent went from $2,200 to $1,100. Their quality of life improved massively. They bought bikes, started hiking, got a dog. They told me they feel like they're actually living now instead of just surviving. Companies tried to force people back to the office, and many did implement return to office mandates. But a huge portion of workers simply refused. They found new jobs that offered permanent remote work, or they negotiated hybrid arrangements where they only come in 1 or 2 days a week. For those hybrid workers, living in London makes even less sense. If you're only in the office 2 days a week, why pay London rent? You can live somewhere cheaper and just travel in when needed. The economics don't work anymore. The rise of regional cities has accelerated this. Manchester, Leeds, Edinburgh, Bristol. These cities now offer good jobs, culture, nightlife, and restaurants is at a fraction of London's cost. They're not London, but they're good enough. And good enough at half the price is a better deal than London. Remote work didn't just make leaving London possible, it made staying in London seem irrational. I decided to spend some time in areas where people are leaving and areas where they're moving to, just to see the difference for myself. I started in zones 2 and 3 in London, places like Clapham, Shoreditch, Brixton. These neighborhoods are still busy, but there's a noticeable shift. More for rent signs than I remember seeing before, more empty commercial units. Conversations I overheard in coffee shops and pubs kept circling back to the same themes. People complaining about rent increases, debating whether to renew their lease or finally leave London, discussing friends who'd already moved away. I spoke to a bartender in Peckham who told me half his regular customers have moved out of London in the past 2 years. He said the vibe has changed. It used to feel like everyone was excited to be in London. Now it feels like everyone's just trying to figure out their exit plan. Then I went to Manchester. The contrast was stark. The city center was buzzing, new apartment buildings going up everywhere. Restaurants packed. People I spoke to who'd moved from London all said the same thing. Their quality of life was better. More space, lower costs, less stress. One guy told me he was earning slightly less than his London job, but saving more money because his rent was nearly half. I visited Bristol next. Same story. Former Londoners everywhere, all happy with their decision to leave. They talked about having actual homes instead of tiny flats, being able to afford to go out, not spending their entire life on public transport. Not one person I spoke to in these cities regretted leaving London, not one. Back in London, I visited some of the outer zones where people stretch their budgets to stay in the city. Zone 5, Zone 6. The commutes from these areas are brutal, over an hour each way. And you're still paying $200 to $400 for a flat. So what does the future hold for London? If current trends continue, it's not looking great. The people leaving aren't just anyone. They're young professionals, families, and skilled workers. The people who drive innovation, start businesses, and contribute to the tax base. They're being replaced by ultra-wealthy foreign buyers and transient international workers who treat London as a temporary career stop. This hollows out the middle class that makes a city function. You end up with the very rich at the top and service workers at the bottom with less and less in between. Inequality keeps growing. The housing crisis shows no signs of improving. Building isn't keeping pace with demand, and what is being built is mostly luxury flats aimed at investors, not actual residents. Planning restrictions make it nearly impossible to build affordable housing at scale. NIMBYism blocks developments constantly. Politicians talk about fixing the housing crisis, but nothing meaningful ever happens. Transport infrastructure is crumbling. The Elizabeth line helped, but it's not enough. Other lines are overcrowded and aging. Investment in public transport hasn't matched the city's growth. Buses are being cut. Fares keep rising. Unless there's massive investment, which seems unlikely given government budgets, it's only going to get worse. The cost of living isn't going to come down. Inflation has permanently reset prices higher. Landlords aren't going to suddenly lower rents out of goodness. Wages will continue to stagnate. The fundamentals that are driving people away aren't changing. What you'll likely see is London becoming more like New York or San Francisco, a playground for the wealthy where normal people can't afford to live and those who do are struggling constantly. The culture and diversity that made London special will erode. It'll become a more sterile, corporate, unaffordable version of itself. Some people will always want to live in London despite all this. For certain careers, it's still necessary. For some people, nowhere else will do. What's happening in London isn't unique. It's a pattern playing out in major cities around the world. New York, San Francisco, Sydney, Toronto, they're all seeing the same thing: sky-high costs, deteriorating quality of life, and people choosing to leave for smaller, more affordable cities. The model of the global megacity that concentrates wealth, jobs, and culture is breaking down. It worked when the benefits clearly outweighed the costs, but that balance has shifted. Remote work, rising costs, and changing lifestyle priorities have made these cities less attractive than they used to be. What made London special, the mix of history, culture, diversity, and opportunity, is being undermined by economic forces that make it unlivable for regular people. You can't have a vibrant city culture when artists, musicians, and creatives can't afford to live there. You can't have innovation when young people are spending all their energy just trying to afford rent. There's a real risk that London becomes a victim of its own success. It became so desirable that it priced out the very people who made it desirable in the first place. And once they're gone, what's left? Expensive flats, corporate chains, and a soulless city that looks impressive but feels empty. The irony is that London still has so much going for it: the history, the architecture, the diversity, the global connections. But none of that matters if people can't afford to actually live there and enjoy it. Right now, London is losing the battle to retain its residents. The city needs fundamental changes to housing policy, transport investment, and cost of living support. Without that, the exodus will continue. London will still exist, it'll still be on postcards and in movies, but it won't be a city where normal people can build a life anymore. It'll be a museum of what it used to be. If you've left London or you're thinking about leaving, let me know why in the comments. And if you're staying, what would it take for you to finally leave? Thanks for watching. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My wife said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories about London and the reality of the United Kingdom like this deserve to be told. Help me show her that these videos matter. Please subscribe to the channel and let's keep these stories from being ignored.